So in this video, we're going to talk about solving quadratic inequalities. So the past few videos, we've been talking about different ways to solve quadratic equations. But in this, we're going to move from inequations, it's not a word. We're going to go from equations to inequalities. All right. So example 1, we have x squared minus 3x minus 4 is less than 0. If you look to the right, I have some steps for us. So it says we're going to factor the equation to find x-intercepts. So we're basically going to factor to solve. We're going to make a number line that plots the x-intercepts, and we're going to plug in a value to test which intervals make the equation true. And then there's a little side note on to that note, but we'll get there in a sec. All right, so first I need to factor. So x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0. I'm going to factor to find my x-intercepts. So x squared minus 4x plus 1x minus 4 And if you forgot how to factor, you can come talk to me before or after school, or you can go watch the factoring video again. That's in Unit 3 if you need help. So then I set this equal to 0. This equal to 0. And my x-intercepts are 4 and negative 1. So now, step 2 tells me to make a number line and plot the x-intercepts. This doesn't have to be exact, but negative 1's over here somewhere, 4 is over here somewhere. So I'm going to factor the equation to find the x-intercepts. So we did that in blue over there to the left. So I factored it and found my x-intercepts to be negative 1 and 4. Negative 1 and 4 go on the number line, like so, like I just did in red. Then part 3 says plug in a value to test which intervals make the equation true. I would probably just plug in a number in the middle. So if you look in between negative 1 and 4, so in between negative 1 and 4 is 0. Okay. So this is step 3. Plug in a number. So I'm going to plug in 0. Pick whatever number you want, your lucky number. I'm going to plug 0 into the equation. So 0 squared minus 0 minus 4. So that's negative 4 is less than 0. So when I plug in 0, my inequality says negative 4 is less than 0. It says to plug in a value to test which intervals make the equation true. So I plugged in 0. So I plugged in 0. When I plugged in 0, my inequality says negative 4 is less than 0. Think in your head, is negative 4 less than 0? The answer to that question is yes. So that means 0 is right here somewhere. So that means that the x value of 0 is true. So I like to put check marks. Since 0 is true, every number between here and here will also be true. Any number outside the range will not be true. It says the true pieces of the number line will always alternate. In quadratic equations, they will always alternate. So, if the middle is true, the outside pieces are not. My solution here would be, what x values is it between? So my actual answer would be when x is between -1 and 4. All right? So we factor the equation, which is what I did in blue, and we get the x-intercepts. We put those x-intercepts on a number line, which I did, -1 and 4 in red, then plug in a random number. Generally 0 is my favorite number to plug in. Plug in 0, and we end up with -4 is less than 0. -4 is in fact less than 0. That's true. So in between -1 and 4 is true because 0 is in between those numbers, and that's the x value I chose to plug in. So the check mark is between -1 and 4. So that means the x values that make the equation true, or the inequality true, are between -1 and 4. Oops. All right, so our second example, I only have 2. So here, I need to make sure that everything is on one side of the equation. So I need to move the 30 over. Then I need to factor. So I'm going to do that in blue again. I'm going to come over here and factor. So 2x squared minus 4x minus 30. Okay, so after you factor, you get x equals 5 and x equals -3. So -3 and 5. And then again, we need to choose a number to plug in to see what part of this interval is true. I like plugging in 0. So we have 2 times 0 squared minus 4 times 0 minus 30 is less than 0. So -30 is less than 0. That is true. So -30 is less than 0. 0 is right here somewhere, so that means the middle is true, which means the outside parts will not be true. So again, my answer will be x is between the x-intercepts of -3 and 5. Not all of them will be the middle. I just worked out that way this time. So you factor the equation and get your x-intercepts, so 5 and -3, which is what I did in blue. You put the x-intercepts on the number line, which is what I did in red. Then you plug in a number, whatever number you want. I will almost always plug in 0. And see if the equation is true. So I plugged in 0. -30 is less than 0. That is true. So the middle's true, and that means the outside parts are not. All right, so that's solving quadratic inequalities. I'll probably do one more with you in class, but hopefully you wrote down those steps over there on the right of the screen, because it'll make your life in class easier tomorrow.